Welcome back. You know, you all are playing these sorts of songs and then you expect me to come back serious. I mean, you know, kind of, if you could play a softer type, song, but it takes me into another place, all right? So I don't want to do that on air, okay? So according to a statement from the Ministry of Trade, Trinidad and Tobago experienced an estimated 69% increase in exports, making it the best performer in Latin America and the Caribbean in 2022. It says these were the findings of the 2022 Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. And it is to be noted that the IDB's trade trends estimate in Latin America and the Caribbean publication stated that exports in the Caribbean region increased at a rate of 38%. With me right now is the Minister of Trade and Industry, Paula Gopi-Schoon.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good news for the economy?
Good news, absolutely. We've distinguished ourselves as having the strongest export growth in the region, and this is not just the CARICOM region, but this is the Caribbean and Latin America. And that's great news, and it's both on the energy side and on the non-energy side. So it tells you that we've benefited from our patrimony, and in terms of the volatility of energy prices over the last year, we have our energy revenues have increased substantially, but also on the non-energy side, because I have a particular interest there from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and in the manufacturing of a sector of Trinidad and Tobago, we've grown by 29% in the last year. So we've gone back to our pre-pandemic levels on the non-energy side. And this is all good news. It speaks to job creation, and it speaks to opportunity for others in terms of the participation and growth of the economy of Trinidad
and that would have been
Tobago.
my question, because persons are looking at you, Minister. We're also we're seeing these percentages being spoken about, but people are going to ask, what's in this for me as a person living in Trinidad and Tobago?
At the end of the day, while I speak about opportunities for participation, it also speaks to job creation. If we have these improved sectors, and in this case the manufacturing sector, but then we're looking as well at the export of our services. We're looking, for instance, at the expansion of the yachting industry, which fell flat on account of COVID. You're talking about job creation. Ultimately, when we speak about exports, it means that you have an expanding services sector, an expanding manufacturing sector. But it's opportunities for jobs, it's jobs creation, and that's key for us. So our aim in the Ministry of Trade and Industry is always to provide the best services and the facilitation for the private sector so that they can expand their business activity. Long term, what we're looking at is the entry of new products, not just in manufacturing, products and services for local consumption, import substitution and exports, but also the job creation. And you would have seen the evidence of the influx at the lower levels with the recently held Agricultural Forum and Convention exhibition, which we held on behalf of CARICOM only in August of last year, where there was high participation at the level of the micro and small businesses. And that tells you about the new level of new entrants and the creativity of our people coming to the fore, some exciting and new products. But what it also speaks to is job creation. These are businesses that are coming out from all over the country. You will probably not find very large businesses in Cedros and Toco, but you will certainly find new entrants coming forward. But they are able to hire 5 people and 10 people and so on. They will grow the economy, and they will grow the economy in their communities and contribute to the overall growth of Trinidad and Tobago. So it's about opportunity for participation in the economy. Ultimately, it's about job creation when we talk about exports and increased investments.
Minister, over the past few weeks, we have been interviewing persons in the business sector on this program. And, that's a trend on the morning edition to interview persons in the business sector. What I've noticed, though, is that there is a level of hopelessness from the business sector as we moved from 2022 into 2023. And not many of them are predicting blue skies ahead. So my question is, why aren't persons in the business sector also feeling the benefits that government is speaking about?
But the benefits are there and the numbers are there. Your manufacturing sector has grown by 29%. I can understand we have to pay attention to the needs of all. So retail is important and will always be important because we are an importing country largely. When we talk about manufacturing, we're talking about food and beverage and wood products and all that have been doing very well. But at the same time, we do have a large retail sector which employs people. They felt the pinch, and this is not just in Trinidad and Tobago. This is across the globe on account of the COVID-19 pandemic initially, and then on account of the war in Ukraine, which has had a significant effect on prices and on the ability to find goods as well. And then economies throughout have had a very difficult time. So the spending power is not there. People are perhaps more conservative. I understand that people are even conservative about paying high prices and so on. And so that we can understand what the world is maneuvering itself out of. But these are figures that have been presented by ECLAC and supported by the IDB, and figures which I have checked with the CSO as well and verified. These are facts. But at the same time, we have to pay attention to the other sides of it. But it's across the globe, and one understands the impact of these of COVID-19, etc., and so on prices. They are all affected.
Minister, there's a perception that it's very difficult to do business in Trinidad and Tobago. One of them you hear people speaking about all of the time is this red tape and delays. Is there need for greater access to services in the business sector and resources and a greater ease to do business in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, and this government recognizes that, and certainly we owe the population, not just the business community, but the population. Everybody wants to enter into one space, putting one set of information and get all of the government services available to them to be able to pay online, etc. There's a reason why, very simply, we've come up with a single ministry that is has responsibility for the digitization and so on, with other ministries also coming on board. We have worked extensively, but in the ministry you would be familiar with the single electronic window, which provides 46 e-business services, which at this time we are strengthening, and so that by April, all of those business services which require payment, all of those payments will be electronic. So this will be done definitely way before the end of this fiscal. But we have, for instance, I recognize the work of the SEW unit and the Ministry of Planning and Development, where in order to get a construction permit or so, you do it online. So the number of days has decreased. But in every ministry, something is being done with regard to ensuring that we are facilitating business and facilitating the people of Trinidad and Tobago, looking towards that single national ID and so on. Every ministry is engaged in the process, but with a key ministry looking at ensuring that we're fully digitized.
Minister, one of the stories in the newspaper today, prices of food and non-alcoholic beverages jumped by 13.80% on average between November 2021 and 2022, November 2022, and data released by the Central Statistical Office yesterday revealed. Any response?
Yes, of course. We know globally prices have gone up. I think if I go back 65%, I would say on account of global supply chain disruptions, COVID-19 coming into the war in Ukraine. Prices have gone up by 65%, but we are monitoring, and I'm expecting to begin to see a reduction in food prices by, let's say, in the next 3 months. I mean, it's a broad statement I'm making, but one has to understand what gave rise to that and what are the growing trends. Looking at the UN, we are importers. We are food importers. We import, I think the figure went up to $6 billion, and as CARICOM, it's about $5 billion US. Substantial importers. But looking at the UN Food and Agriculture Index, that has been going down over the last month. or last 9 months actually, we reached a high in March 2022 of about 158 points. We're down to about 132 points. There are categories that are reducing. So I'm talking about your cereals, your meats, oils, sugars. They have been gradually going down. Not where pre-pandemic, we're not near the pre-pandemic levels of 108 points, but at the same time it's going down, and if it is, our distributors and our manufacturers in terms of their inputs into manufacturing are sourcing goods extra regionally, we expect that these prices will have some effect on the ultimate price. What we've seen, and again, not right there, but what we've seen as well is that freight rates, which peaked, for instance, I will only look at one particular rate, where a rate would have been at 5,000 US per container. That has gone down to, I've seen 1,500, and so definitely near pre-pandemic levels. So I expect that to contribute into a lowering of prices. And whilst I understand that importers would have, we've never had a problem of a shortage, maybe you lost a brand or something, but we never had a shortage of goods. Whilst I understand that they have purchased goods perhaps 6 months ago to ensure that it gets here on time and their existing stock, we're monitoring and we're talking to the population and communicating with them. We expect market forces to produce some reduction in prices. At the end of the day, we've seen some astronomical prices, and particularly when one looks at baby milk and milk on the whole, astronomical, unaffordable, $10 increase in prices.
But isn't there a
and
risk?
more recently, I've seen milk prices going up as well. That is unacceptable.
But isn't there a risk of prices rising again because of what is happening in China and the United States and other parts of the world as it relates to
China
COVID?
but if you're monitoring at all, you're seeing that China has eased its restrictions.
Yes,
and so we're monitoring from the UN Food and Agricultural Organization price index. That's what we're monitoring from, and the feed prices, and that's where. And there have been some reduction. About 40 items, we monitor about 118 items. About 40 items I've seen reductions in, but another 70 something we've seen increases. But there are also those distributors who will not want to, who are not likely to reduce prices. That's unacceptable. But we expect market forces to encourage, and I'm seeing a lot of advertisements and specials on the newspapers by other supermarkets, other than other supermarkets all over the country. And I think it's very important that people follow us in terms of the communication every month. There are food prices and hardware prices as well. Hardware prices are quarterly, but we are exposing, we are putting it out there where they can find better bargains. Consumers have to think about growing their own food as well. This is something that we talk about, doing something for yourself, buying local. We are self-sufficient in poultry, local poultry.
And there are enough incentives in place to
totally.
help locals?
Exactly. We're self-sufficient in table eggs and in poultry, and there's an aim to expand our production of meats, goat meat. We are very important. I think with about 2 million kilograms of goat meat per annum and so on. People have to get back to basics, not get back to basics in terms of basic food, but what can I produce for myself? Why are we importing these things? Rice production of root crops and vegetables, and so on. We have to be serious, and there is opportunity, and the opportunity comes through the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries in terms of the incentives on offer and the work that they're doing with CARICOM in terms of reducing the food import bill by 25% by 2025. The opportunity also comes through the Ministry of Youth and with responsibility for youth, where there are a number of programs, homestead programs as well, programs on farming, quite pointed. There is now, I saw recently an advertisement for part-time training for farmers. So whereas we would have had a cadre of persons entering the full-time program, I think we had something like 1,400 persons applying for the part-time program. So there is interest now in agriculture that you were not seeing before, and the incentives are there, the conversation is there, the ministry is working seamlessly with Guyana. For instance, President Ali is a lead head with responsibility for agriculture within CARICOM. There's a program. We are participating. We are partners with Guyana and all of CARICOM in terms of focusing on food production,
Minister,
feeding ourselves, reducing that bill.
there is still a problem concerning U.S. in Trinidad and Tobago. Just on the weekend, I was speaking to someone in business, and they expressed concern about what is a perceived, or it could be real rather than perceived, a shortage in U.S. Is there any mechanism in place that the government will work on this year to make U.S. more readily available to everyone?
Listen, again, we come back to curbing our imports, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to congratulate Ministry of Finance through the Exim Bank. They've ensured that any importers of basic items have access to U.S. through the Exim Bank. Any importer of raw material as an input into manufacturing, there is access. But we don't control banks. But through the Exim Bank, I know that distributors and importers of basic items, importers of basic items and manufacturers can in fact source foreign exchange. If you're purchasing machinery and equipment for your expansion of your business, you can in fact access a loan through the Exim Bank. There are a number of products that are available through them where you can have access to foreign exchange. And this is apart from your normal commercial banker, which is your relationship. That's the government has nothing to do with that.
Minister, we are in the dying seconds of our interview, but I must ask you one more question before we leave. Earlier we had Mr. Alan Ferguson of the Scrap Iron Dealers Association. He was complaining that government is yet to engage in any talks with the association concerning the reopening of the industry. That is this year. What can you tell scrap iron dealers this morning?
Let me say that the stakeholder interaction is strong, that we've had coming up into the end of 2022. There was considerable stakeholder interaction. As we've moved in, the legislation has been completed and passed through both parliaments. What is required to be done now is the actual regulations. They are substantial, and that is being worked on between the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Ministry of the Attorney General and so on, and the CPC. Those are in preparation. Meanwhile, what is before Cabinet would be the proclamation of particular clauses to allow for the industry to restart. Those are before us. They're being studied. We expect a decision very, very soon. But these are things we have to be careful about because it's a partial proclamation. It will be so that the industry would be reopened. We are ready for the implementation in the Ministry of Trade and Industry. We are connecting with all of the other ministries and agencies that will have responsibilities once the partial proclamation is made, so that we are able to communicate how we expect this industry to flow. Meanwhile, until we have the full proclamation in April. So they will be able to operate soon enough. But there are things, the partial proclamation is to be done, and that's before Cabinet. And the interim implementation, until the full implementation, is being worked out by the Ministry of Trade and Industry. I've spoken to the AG as late as yesterday on it, but we are readying ourselves so that we can communicate with the stakeholders soonest, once the proclamation is done, as to immediate implementation based on the partial proclamation.
Minister, it was a pleasure speaking to you this morning.
Always a pleasure. Look forward to chatting again soon.
All right, thank you very much. So we are now going to our 7 o'clock news headlines.